Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. I'm your host Samuel McCullough, but I'm just a sub-host today because the LlamaRisk guys are here. Wonderful guys they are. I see Wormhole, and I also see Alberto, and we got a bunch of other people here as well too that they're going to introduce just here in a second. But before we get there, I want to talk about our sponsor, FX Protocol. Do you guys use FX Protocol at all? Wormhole, Alberto.
Oh, you're talking. I thought you were talking to the people at home.
No, I'm talking to you.
I have used FX Protocol. We have a good relationship with their team. We talk with them quite often, and we met up with them at ECC last year. Really good guys. So yeah, we like FX.
Yeah. Have you done a LlamaRisk report on them yet?
We do have a LlamaRisk report out. Yeah, so I can link everybody that, or we can get them a link to that one.
Or you should check it out. FX Protocol has their nice invariant, FX invariant, which allows you to split your asset like ETH or other types of crypto into either a stable coin or a leveraged X position that offers up to 10x leverage. So we have a link in the show notes, and also come check us out. Come talk about it in the Squid Cave. So yeah, FX, go check it out. All right, let's get into today. Wormhole, what's on deck today?
Yeah, so thanks for having us on, Sam. Always a pleasure to be here. We love the Leviathan guys and appreciate being able to join the show. So today we're having in my opinion, a very interesting discussion that is a breath of fresh air. The savings scrvUSD, which we started having a conversation about this a few weeks back. I am really happy that we ended up having to reschedule this and have it now, because what we've observed over the past month or so has been a lot of the things that we were looking to see from savings scrvUSD have started to play out, and we've got some interesting analysis that we can share at this point. So today we're joined by Alberto from Swiss Stake, with Benny from Curve Monitor, and Thomas and Take a Breath from LlamaRisk. The three of our teams together, I would say, make up the bulk of the service providers for Curve, and the three of our teams collaborate a lot. So it's really great for me to be able to be on stream with all of you guys, so that we can talk about this new product that the Curve team has put out recently, and all of the analysis that we've been looking into about what are the observed adoption metrics, and how has savings scrvUSD had a influence on the Curve ecosystem overall. So really excited to get into this. Let's get started with Alberto, because you had a really big role to play in making savings scrvUSD happen. And you had spent time thinking about a particular problem or set of problems you were looking to solve with this product. So what was the issue that you were observing? What problem were you trying to solve, and how does savings scrvUSD address that?
Hey, GM everyone. So thanks for having me here, Wormhole and Sam. I've been one of the main developers alongside another contributor on the GitHub about scrvUSD. And yeah, the design, maybe I'm gonna give you a bit of context on the design process behind it. So from the user point of view, scrvUSD is basically the SDAI equivalent SDAI equivalent for scrvUSD. So it's a savings product which allows you to deposit your scrvUSD. You can redeem it at any point in time. There is no rehypothecation whatsoever. And through this product, you earn some yield, which is currently averaging around 12%, if I'm not mistaken, but we're gonna see that later because we have a bunch of cool charts that I already gave a sneak peek to. The architecture of the scrvUSD is very simple. It's just a yarn vault. So we use some very battle-tested code. There is no rehypothecation whatsoever behind it. It's what people used to call like real yield, if you will. And it comes directly from fees generated by people leveraging using scrvUSD. So to give a bit more context on why we needed to create this product in the first place, I think it's important to think of how scrvUSD works. So it's pretty simple, right? People that want to leverage, they can put their collateral in the scrvUSD protocol, and they manage to mint, so they give this collateral as a guarantee to mint some scrvUSD. So it's a CDP protocol, so you have an over collateralized position.
And can I just jump in for a second here, Alberto, because I want to emphasize something that I find a breath of fresh air about scrvUSD and savings scrvUSD, which is that you put a lot of effort into creating products that don't have any backdoor. So there's no admin controls that users can be rugged, or their access to their money is somehow restricted for any reason. And that's been a priority for Curve products as long as I've been involved with Curve since 2020. It's a foundational principle, and it's what drew me to Curve, that it really embodies the true spirit of DeFi and trying to create products that are truly non-custodial and don't have any backdoors. And that's really what I appreciate about this product, especially when we have things going on recently with some DeFi products that users end up getting roped into a product and finding out later that, well, actually there was an admin control that completely changed the properties of this application, basically rugging, me. So that I just wanted to make that point, but continue, please.
Yeah, I completely agree. I even had someone in the team actually say that we should probably say that like scrvUSD tries to be a better DAI somehow. I don't know if we want to really say this because, from my hand, DAI will die is not a good slogan, or it turned out not to be the best. But in general, like, this is kind of the philosophy we try to adopt when building scrvUSD. So the idea is simple. Like as any CDP product out there, scrvUSD faces some scalability challenges, and this means that we need to give a good reason for people that are not leveraging. We need to give those people like a good reason to hold scrvUSD. And this is pretty simple because in the end, if you just mint scrvUSD, you're not going to keep it just for the sake of it. You need to find something to do with it. And the biggest use case so far has been leverage. So people have to sell it in order to leverage up. So basically, all CDP systems historically have always given back some incentives to give reason to people to buy back scrvUSD and hold it just to earn some yield. There's a very, very good video presenting this from, I think, Michael from Liquidity. And what is really surprising about scrvUSD is that the soft liquidation premium basically was like the premium that people pay on the interest rate because of soft liquidation is so basically was sufficient to make scrvUSD hold its peg hold its peg, but we don't just want to hold the peg, we also want to be a competitive product. And to achieve that, basically, the goal was to reduce interest rates, because if people leverage up, interest rate also go up because we want to maintain the peg. So interest rates are purely algorithmic, so we don't control the interest rates like in other protocols. So the way we have to do this is we just sit and watch people repay their position, because interest rates are going to become very aggressive if scrvUSD becomes off peg. So yeah, instead of forcing people to repay, which basically forces people to close their positions, which is not good for scaling scrvUSD, we wanted to create a savings product where people that do not own any scrvUSD are incentivized to buy some scrvUSD, to stake it into the vault, and in this way obtain a part of the yield that basically the whole system generates. And one part I want to insist on about this whole yield sharing structure is that it's really built in a scalable way where we never overspend to incentivize those people to come. What this means is, simply speaking, we set a weight that we for what percentage of the yield generated from scrvUSD should be shared. Before the introduction of scrvUSD, we had 100% of the yield being shared with vCRV lockers, so people that lock their CRV tokens, so they get basically dividends from the protocol. But we had to take a cut from that to basically make sure that we could also like pay scrvUSD. Now this is where kind of
so you've introduced this fee splitter, so you can share the fee in multiple places. Right now, the fee is being split just between vCurve token holders and scrvUSD. In the
yes,
future, that could be expanded to multiple other purposes.
absolutely.
But there's another unique kind of property to the fee splitter, which savings curve USD is not receiving a fixed amount of the proportion of overall fees that the system is earning, right? It's a dynamic
Absolutely.
fee. So can you explain to us how the dynamic fee works? Why you have created it that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, we wanted to make sure that the yield could adjust to sustain the scrvUSD peg. And so it's a very intuitive mechanism, but you want to have a feedback loop where the more people leverage, the more you give. But at the same time, the more demand there is for, so basically the feedback loop is simple. Like if more people leverage, scrvUSD makes more fees. So the percentage that people get in the vault increases as well. But where it's really interesting is the weight of the percentage also scales dynamically. So let's say 50% of the supply of scrvUSD is staked into the staking vault. Well, that basically means that 50% of what is generated by the protocol would be also shared with the stakers in the vault. Now, this as a big caveat, I mean, it's not a caveat, it's just the way we define the system. There are some rail guards for very good reasons, because we don't want to share everything, because if all of a sudden 100% of the CRVUSD supply gets staked, it's what we call Ouroboros, I guess, in the space. So to prevent that, we have some safety caps. We have an upper limit on how high the percentage can go, because we don't want to incentivize past a certain limit. And this is actually currently governance controlled. And I think we will see that more like in depth later with all the nice plots we have coming. So there is a safety limit, so that like we don't overspend for incentivizing, because the end goal for us is to increase the revenue overall, so that we have more gunpowder to build more stuff. So if we were to share basically all our dividends to scrvUSD stakers, we're not really earning much. The goal is to reinvest for growth, because out of growth, then that percentage that still goes to vCRV holders can increase over time. So it's more like a bet on the long term. But this still has to be done with some railguards. And we also have a minimum weight, which is done to basically bootstrap the yield, because if the vault would have been empty, we would have not been able to incentivize without adding a minimum weight. So I don't remember, but it's actually quite low now. And the current cap is for the how much yield can be shared is 50%. But
Right.
interestingly enough, we are around 30%, right? Because 30% of the supply of scrvUSD is staked in the vault, which basically means we're not overspending up to 50%. We're just, there is a demand for 30% of yield sharing. So we allow that. And this is what we're currently sharing.
So there are really two components with with the control mechanism of how fee sharing happens. There's the free market. So depending on what prevailing rates are and whatever the risk premium is associated with CurveUSD itself, the free market can decide whether or not it's worth it to stake. And that interest rate is going to fluctuate based off of just market dynamics of people entering and exiting the vault. But then there's the second component of this governance mechanism. So there is some admin control that can control these parameters of how the fee distribution happens, what's the cap on it, how much portion of the overall revenue gets distributed to scrvUSD vault. So just to be clear on how the whole admin parameterization of that works, can you just describe to us the governance that's involved in it?
Yeah, so basically the way we do this is anytime you want to raise the cap or lower the cap, so increase or decrease the ceiling, which of course makes sense only when we actually reach that cap, because otherwise the system is pretty sustainable. But let's say like there is an increased surge in demand for scrvUSD, and now the cap goes, and now the weight goes up. and we hit the cup. So we were now at 30%, but the demand increases, so we get to like 60% of the supply getting staked into the vault. In that case, revenue sharing will be capped at 50%, and the way to change it is you have to go through a CurveDAO governance post, which requires, of course, a governance post where we discuss this in depth. And then if the DAO decides to vote positively, you can change this after a week of voting. So this is actually what we went through for the first raise. We had a few very small raises at the very beginning of the protocol where we were slowly increasing, but then we went for a more like significant step. I think we went from 30 to 50. I'm not sure, but we had a big ramp up in the cap, and people were actually shared some concerns about, well, maybe this cap is gonna go up super quick, and we won't, and we will have to raise it again. So is the system sustainable or not? But this actually didn't have to happen because we raised the cap for the governance vote. So you guys made a very good analysis on how it was working so far to justify the rationale behind the cap increase. And after that, we raised it, but the system kind of found an equilibrium around 30%, which is where we're at right now.
So let's get kind of to. Oh yeah, sorry.
I have a couple of questions, right? So like with the saving scrvUSD, right? Like, shouldn't it, if it goes 100% full, right? I know you guys have the caps right now, but if it goes 100% full, wouldn't that affect the interest rates for borrowing? Wouldn't it push them lower? So like there'd be like, one, you wouldn't be getting anything out of it, and two, the borrowing costs to actually go and borrow with scrvUSD would like go way down, so it would incentivize people to come in and take those borrows. Is that how it works?
Well, this is an hypothetical scenario because, of course, we would never allow for a 100% cap.
Right. But let's say it's like 90% cap and it gets filled. Like, what would happen with the interest rates on?
Well, if 100% of the supply is currently being staked, that means nobody has sold scrvUSD, and if nobody has sold scrvUSD, there is no reason for it to be.
The interest rates would like just plummet, right?
Yeah, but it's a very weird scenario because you wouldn't have any scrvUSD in liquidity pools because 100% would be in the.
Okay, well, let's assume like an 80-20 split where you have 20% in the liquidity pool supporting, which is kind of like the minimum you would need, and then the other 80% is staked, right? Like,
and just to jump in here, we actually have observed that borrow rates on CurveUSD have plummeted almost to zero for some markets. And that's just because of the dynamics of how the monetary policy works. I actually want to get a little bit more into the details of how the CurveUSD monetary policy works, because that's an important part of this dynamic of what the supply sink of savings CurveUSD is trying to achieve. But anyway, yeah, it's been pretty interesting that it's almost been free to borrow from CurveUSD the past couple of days.
Yeah, currently the interest rates are very low. And this was exactly what we were hoping for. We don't know, of course, if it's correlation or causation, but to some extent, we would say like the experiment is going very well. So yeah, so far it's been like that positive feedback loop we were hoping for. But I guess to answer your question, so let's get back to the 80-20 split. I guess the answer is yes, like interest rates would be super low, and basically there would be super strong incentives to borrow. So actually, this is what Michael Agurov from like Curve has been suggesting, to go up to 80%. But so far, there is no need to do so because first of all, there is not enough demand for scrvUSD, because even if we raise the cap, we're not actually distributing more. We're just allowing for more to be distributed if demand actually asks for it. So far, there's been no even need to ask to like have that discussion. But like the idea is, ideally, with an 80-20% split, we would go like max leverage on the growth of scrvUSD, because we would be investing everything to make interest rates go down as much as possible so that people leverage. But I guess what this is showing, this equilibrium being found and like interest rates going down, I guess it just proves the point that like the bottleneck is not the borrow rates anymore. Like we had one moment where I think borrow rates were so high that like people were not borrowing anymore because
like
of
30% plus APR.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is not the case anymore. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. Just I wanted to see how like, what would happen if this or that. So yeah, that answers my question.
So getting to kind of the crux of the whole thing, I think, is that what is this really in the interest of the Curve DAO to support? Because what they're essentially doing is they're saying, hey, here's some revenue that I could have, but I'm instead going to give it away to CurveUSD holders. And so vCurve is deciding that it's in my interest to give revenue away. But what is the end goal that it really is in the DAO's interest to be distributing revenue towards this type of purpose?
Yeah, I mean, the end goal is we basically like, for us, scrvUSD has been a big cash cow in the sense that it generates most of the revenue of the DAOs, like as much as the liquidity pools, depending on in which phase of the market we are or in how many black swans we're having a day. But point is, we've been pushing a lot for the scrvUSD adoption because it makes money for vCRV holders. So this is really where the alignment is. Like this is as I was saying, this is more like it's deciding whether we want to do a short-term bet and like redistribute everything, but like we cannot reuse those funds to like to reinject those funds in the system, or whether we want to like have lower revenues, lower dividends, if you will, like on the short term, but potentially higher revenues on the long term, because we're actually scaling the supply, so we're scaling the growth. Like honestly, even if in the worst case scenario we were to take 80%, which is not the case so far, and it's not shown to be necessary. But let's say we take 80% of the fee for sharing with SCRV holders. If we get to that 80%, hopefully scrvUSD will have scaled to a point where 20% will not only make up for like the fee cut, but we will also like be even greater. This is kind of the rationale behind it. So the alignment comes really from the fact that like it's a bet on growth, and this is one of the many initiatives we are thinking of to like grow further like the revenues for the DAO. Because with the fee splitter, like now this is the first attempt, which is a very controlled one where we have a bunch of safety rails, but we can do even smaller attempts at like smaller things. Like we could do a third like venue for revenue sharing with one more project that can be used to reinject for growth. Could be for liquidity pools, it could be for scrvUSD. We have plenty of options open.
Cool. So if you'll indulge me for a minute, I want to kind of go into more further explanation about how the monetary policy works that affects the interest rates for borrowing CurveUSD. This is an important component to what Savings CurveUSD is hoping to achieve through being a supply sink. What we're looking for is to create conditions where the monetary policy will produce lower rates for borrowing so that we can get a supply expansion to take place. So I'm sharing my screen here to give you a look at the components that will affect the interest rates. There's basically two components. There's the peg price. So when CurveUSD is trading below $1, interest rates are higher. And then there's the portion of peg keeper debt to overall debt. That means that peg keepers will supply into the target peg keeper pool. So for example, there's a CurveUSD USDT peg keeper pool, and the peg keeper attempts to balance that pool when CurveUSD starts trading above $1. Peg keepers will activate and start deploying CurveUSD to the pool. And what the monetary policy is looking at is how much debt is coming from the peg keepers versus the overall total debt, which is the debt from CDPs plus peg keeper debt. When that fraction gets higher, then we start to see the rates fall. So you can see here as the fraction goes higher, rates start going down. Now there's an important number here, which is the debt fraction, which is the inflection point where the rates have fallen to their target rate. And what the system tries to incentivize for is to have a target debt of 10%, or a target debt fraction of 10%. And what we what we are observing recently is, and we're going to go into this with our analysis, is that peg keepers have been activating. They have been, scrvUSD has been getting up to peg, and as a result, the monetary policy has been producing historically very, very low borrow values. And just to give you a clear look at what that looks like, Benny has this nice post that he put on Twitter, and he's showing us the average scrvUSD borrow rates versus borrow rates USDC on Aave. And you can see here at the inception of scrvUSD, there's been a clear downtrend ever since then. And I look at this chart and I think, wow, that's beautiful. That looks to me like there is a very clear correlation between the introduction of scrvUSD and rates going down. But Benny, you made this chart, and I'm wondering if you think that correlation and causation are are related there, or do you think that there could be other factors that are resulting in this trajectory that we're seeing?
Well, I think there's two things, right? There's the rates going down, and at least, part of that is going to be driven also by demand. But what you see is that even during that period in December where USDC rates on Aave are going crazy, which indicates that there's a lot of demand for leverage at this point, the rates on scrvUSD, they're still going down. So I think that's a pretty good sign that what you have is not just like random correlation. And I guess the other feature of the graph that I find really interesting is the volatility, right? Like and this is something that we keep getting as feedback from users, as what's preventing you from taking out a loan on scrvUSD, and people are like, well, I don't want to sign up for a loan today at 10% and then find out tomorrow that it's going to be 30%. And so if you look at the green line and also the sort of standard deviation around it, right, you start seeing that volatility, and you could say intraday volatility, the way that the rate would fluctuate has been getting a lot tighter, right? The deviation around the average rate. And so I think this is also something that's less maybe obvious, but tremendously important for the sustainable growth of scrvUSD, is that we've managed to keep rates at a predictable level. And so that's going to be very important for demand moving forward.
Yeah, so it's perhaps a little bit too early for us to say, hey, scrvUSD is a resounding success. Rates are going to be low forever now. But nonetheless, I look at that and I think, wow, it looks like the goals that you're trying to achieve with scrvUSD are starting to play out, and they have been playing out ever since its inception. So Alberto, you should be proud of yourself for getting this product in action. I think you're doing an excellent job, and the Curve team is doing an excellent job. So let's really get into the analysis now of what are our observations of scrvUSD's performance since inception. So let's start with some of the LlamaRisk analysis. Take a breath. You have put together this Dune dashboard, which I can share here. And maybe you could walk us through what are some of the interesting observations that you have been making.
Yeah, absolutely. So at LlamaRisk, we cooked up this Dune dashboard, which gives CurveDAO stakeholders and scrvUSD holders as well a good
Which
overview.
I can see the dashboard, but I don't know if it's up on the screen. Yeah, there it is.
There we go. Yeah, so like I said, gives scrvUSD stakeholders and CurveDAO stakeholders a good overview of what the status of scrvUSD and savings scrvUSD, more particular, the status of those assets as well. And we see here on the top row some overview statistics of the current circulating supply of scrvUSD, scrvUSD supply, stake percentage of curvUSD, as well as the current price of curvUSD. Now, if you scroll a little bit down, you could also look at the supply growth percentage as well as the aggregate price time series, which I think is quite interesting to observe. So on the aggregated price time series, we could see that around, I believe, early January, we see a convergence to curvUSD going to $1. And on the supply growth percentage, we could see also a spike in the supply growth percentage of curvUSD. Now, if you also scroll a little bit lower down to the PK debt versus total debt percentage, we would see that
before we move on too fast, I want to I want to really just emphasize this a little bit more. So this is the curvUSD aggregated price. This is the price that the monetary policy is referencing. And it's also the price that peg keepers reference when they are determining whether or not they're allowed to mint or burn curvUSD from the peg keeper pools. So we can see that ever since inception of savings curvUSD, there has been a underpeg period that has been progressively getting back to its peg. We've recently gone over the $1 mark in the past few days, and as a consequence, we've seen that the peg keepers have been activating like crazy to keep curvUSD from going over peg. So this is just a beautiful trajectory, I think. Over the course of the past
maybe Wormel, if you allow me to like add one thing, I would like to precise that like I wouldn't call that a depeg, because if you look at it's very zoomed in, so it looks like it went to 0 and then back up to 1, but it's really like we're talking about minor deviations in the price compared to other stable coins.
Right. Yeah. It was trading under peg, not technically. Let's not call it a depeg because that sounds alarming. But it's typically trading under peg, and I think that historically that's been a big driver of high interest rates for curvUSD. With the inception of this new supply sink, that's soaking up a lot of this supply that would have been sold on the market, and it appears. I mean, correlation, causation, hard to say for sure after this relatively short time period. But it appears that scrvUSD is doing its job at being a supply sink and getting curvUSD back up to peg.
Yeah, absolutely. And a good point there, Alberto, because the scale for this aggregated price time series chart is actually logarithmic. So it does look misleading to see those moments, where there are spikes and think that there's massive depegs. But in reality, it's, if we had to just use like a normal scale, you would see that there's almost very little difference in the price of curvUSD in the time series observed there. And like you referenced, Wormel, we've seen the PK debt, the peg keeper debt versus total debt chart, just a more recent uptick in the PK debt. And that's just to keep the price of curvUSD at peg, like you mentioned before.
Cool. So let's take a look at this supply growth. Since November 1st, there's been a 60% supply growth.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also important to note the dates of interest as well. So CurveDAO also voted to increase the fee share rate to 50% on the 14th of December. And it's also important to keep note of those dates of interest as well when observing these charts. And also moving on to the fee flow, we also showed the weekly fee flow of fees going to scrvUSD holders as a consequence of curvUSD being staked. So like Alberto said, there's currently around 30% curvUSD being staked, of the supply being staked for savings curvUSD. And in our fee flow section, we see the cumulative awards that scrvUSD holders have been accruing as a consequence as well. And we get to see the fee splitter distribution as well in this section, and the current fee share percentage, which is like Alberto said, around 30% as well.
And then the one other thing I wanted to emphasize here is related to monetary policy again. So here you have the peg keeper debt versus the total debt, and you've marked out that 10% debt fraction. We can see that ever since savings scrvUSD has been deployed, peg keepers have not been activated, and that's because scrvUSD has been trading under peg for all that time. The moment that it goes over peg keepers start activating like crazy, and you can see they quickly surpassed that 10% target. And that's the reason that we've been seeing recently that interest rates have been so low, because that debt fraction has been way over the target recently. And I was just checking today on the trajectory, and it looks like peg keepers are starting to pull to burn scrvUSD from the peg keeper pools. So that can be expected to start gradually normalizing, and probably rates are going to go back towards a prevailing market rate for those assets, those collaterals. So really exciting stuff going on here.
Yeah, and we're still developing this dashboard as well to provide as many useful metrics for users to view here. But yeah, so far it looks really nice.
Cool. So let's move on with some additional analysis that Thomas you've been working on. Would you like to share your screen?
Sure, I can. Just 1 minute. Is it visible?
There it is.
Okay, awesome. A lot of this has been covered already. So this is mainly updated charts from Governance Forum response we gave. Effectively, this first chart is interesting to see. It's just the APY that you can receive.
Hey Thomas, sorry. Do you think that you could increase the size of your screen a little bit?
Yes, no problem.
Thank you.
I think that works. Yeah, what you see here is the projected APY plotted against the supply, and we indicating here the different dates where the transaction for the fee cap was increased. So here you see the initial move, or here you see the launch, then you see the increase to 20%, and then you see the increase to 50%. And what you see as the supply increases, you see the projected APY going down. Made here also a simple model, just a quadratic fit, but it seems to hold up. So we did this analysis, projected out, and funnily enough, it actually did a pretty good job at estimating where supply would be. Turning to the mid markets, we saw this chart already in Benny's tweet. This is again just the rates of the individual markets, again indicated with the different dates. And here we're looking now at the collateral of the mint markets, or the collateral composition of the lend markets. Again, there's I wouldn't say anything super meaningful to take away from this chart, just that it's increasing lately, which
I will make one point about that, Thomas. You can see in the last couple of days that the total collateral had a sharp decrease, and it's recovered quickly. I believe that was due to perhaps just one whale that was exiting. It looks like they've exited a lot of their wrap staked ETH position. That went way down.
Yeah.
Or perhaps they migrated to another collateral type. I haven't looked closely into that, but it was interesting that this happened at the same time scrvUSD was reaching peg. That was really a catalyst for what caused peg keepers to so aggressively deploy, and that debt fraction went so high so fast.
Yeah, you see this as well here very well in this chart, which just puts these individually together and shows you the nominal amount, so the units of account of the different markets, and you see like these drops, but the rest seems to be rapidly increasing. And you see the same with the debt. I'm going to skip this one chart, but you see it here with BBDC, like increased loans or positions being taken. And yeah, the other aspect that we added that isn't in the original analysis is just the peg keeper pools have a little bit of a or perspective on the dynamics, and it's pretty much what you already mentioned, Worm, that since scrvUSD went over peg, or like was trading above the peg, that the peg keepers have been activating, and you see this really across the markets, or predominantly actually in the USDC and USDT market, which you see here, and the USDM market less so, and again PyUSD a little bit. But
yeah, so you know, my hypothesis in the last time we had this stream a few weeks back turned out to be untrue. I was concerned that with the introduction of scrvUSD, that other sources of curveUSD, like the peg keeper pools, which are systemically important to curveUSD because they allow it to rebalance its peg. There needs to be sufficient liquidity in the peg keeper pools. I was concerned that scrvUSD would kind of cannibalize these other systemically important venues, and we would see outflows from peg keeper pools and reduced liquidity depth. It appears that we've actually seen the opposite happen. Would you agree with that? I mean, it looks like those charts are going up and to the right.
It does. Yeah, like I feel like
wouldn't that be the case? Didn't they go up just because the peg keeper is activated, because they also count as users of the pool? Or wait, is blue? Yeah. Because since peg keeper is activated, because the whale was, of course, it was the whale repayment was basically forcing the price of scrvUSD to pump. So basically, peg keepers could mint and back scrvUSD, and that's what went into the pools. This is why we see an increase in the amount of scrvUSD in the pools. But at the same time, there is also an increase in the amount of USDT. So maybe you're right. Does that make sense? Because
yeah, so this spike that we see in just the past few days, this could end up being a transient spike, basically, because peg keepers usually do not stay active for a substantial length of time. It's usually a few days before the peg kind of normalizes, and then peg keepers start withdrawing.
Yeah, but it's something to look more into, I guess, to study further.
All right. Well, is that about it from your HackMD doc?
It is actually. It's very succinct. There's not much to add.
All right. Well, let's move on to next portion. So Benny has done some analysis, in particular on user behaviors and interactions between scrvUSD and other curve venues. So he can actually give some additional insight, I think, to this this topic we're just getting into now. But yeah, also with user behaviors and just general adoption metrics of scrvUSD. So Benny, do you want to share your screen and show us what you got?
Yeah, sure. So I've started sharing my screen, but I don't know if it's showing up already. It is. All right,
yep,
cool.
We can see it now.
Yeah, so just to start and look at user growth, because this is also what I guess the revenue sharing is for, and to be able to keep growing this product. So overall, there's probably a lot less depositors than what than people might assume. There is about 300 unique wallets that have deposited so far into the savings vault. And most of that, about half of that, happened during the first months, like right after launch. So it was a very successful launch, and we've seen the effect of that on the rates and on the volatility of the rates right after it started. And so we continue to see growth, and as Alberto has mentioned before, like this is not hockey stick growth. It's growing in a very sustainable way. And I think what's important is that we've also got a number of avenues to sort of keep growing both the savings product and then scrvUSD as a lending product underneath. But I'll talk about a bit about that more later. So this is just quantity, but there's also something interesting about the quality of the users. The first thing is, like, obviously it's not it's not fake volume. It's actual real users that are using the product. There's very few of them that are just testing out the product with like dust. Right. Even in that first bin, which is like users that have like $0 to $1,000, like most people will have a few hundreds. So they're all legitimate users, and we've got very few sort of like testing accounts, and we've also got very few whales. Like there's only 7 accounts that have deposited more than 1 million, which is important because it means that like if you think about the volatility of the APR this time for the savings product, like it's not a single whale that's going to hog up all the rewards, and then if it decides to exit, it's going to send the APR skyrocketing. So it's a sort of like very normal distribution, and you can see that it's a type of organic growth with the product.
And it could be that whales are not an individual. It could be that whales could be an integrating DeFi protocol or something that just shows up as one address.
So I filtered those out because it's quite I didn't want to have like some contracts, for example, like Yarn Vault obviously would deposit like a lot into scrvUSD, but then like those also have actual users behind them, right? So this is not included in the graph. So those are just like this is not including protocols or like the pools on Curve, which obviously would hold a much larger part of the liquidity, but don't really reflect the reality of who actually deposited how much. And then one thing that I really found interesting is that if you look at the users that are depositing in that vault, it's a completely different profile from, let's say, your CRV, your scrvUSD users, which is, like this is what we want, and this is what the protocol was designed for, or at least this new feature. But it's kind of really neat to look at the data and see it appear so cleanly, right? Like if you look at scrvUSD users, like people are going there for leverage. There's like 80% of the people that take out a loan are like looping it. So like users of scrvUSD, they're degens. They're looking for leverage. They have like risk-seeking behavior. Even with soft liquidations, we see on scrvUSD like almost as many, if not more, hard liquidations as we see on Ava. And that's just because people are, the users on there are risk takers. And now, if you look at the users that are depositing into savings scrvUSD, you realize that those people have a completely different risk profile, right? They're basically stable coin farmers, or they'll go with crypto assets that are, like blue chip. They'll have ETH, they'll have like a RAD BTC, or some CRV ecosystem tokens. And so what you see on this graph is like what other protocols and what features on those other protocols like users of savings scrvUSD are using. And so by far they're Curve users, Convex users, and what they do on Curve is really just farming and staking. Right? And here is Curve stablecoin. So like it's about 10 people. Right? So there's and like most of those are probably just the Curve team that tried out taking loans on CRV on scrvUSD. So it's not like people take out a loan and then get the scrvUSD and stake it in the product. Like those people just get leverage, they sell their scrvUSD, and then it's bought out by a completely different type of users that are looking for yield and sort of a safe source of yield on stablecoins, not speculative at all. And so I thought that was interesting because it's really how the protocol is meant to work. Like we want on one hand people to max borrow, and on the other hand, and sell their scrvUSD, and we're looking for people to sort of purchase that scrvUSD and create that supply sink. And so what we're seeing is that we've been very successful so far at appealing to those two classes of users, right? And creating a product that will appeal to risk seekers on one hand, and then with Curve savings, like with savings scrvUSD, something that appeals to users that are a lot more conservative. And so
we should have shared this chart at the beginning of the conversation.
So this is not my this is not my chart. This is from Curve Resources, and so this is Mo and Saint Rat that have done absolutely amazing work over there.
And the graphics are also the graphics are from Tutti as well.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if Tutti.
They are.
They are. All right. So credit where credit is due. But yeah. Right. So it's just beautiful to see the system working out so well. Now, just to maybe conclude quickly, like maybe I'll just talk about some avenues for growth that we have, both for the savings product and for scrvUSD. One thing that I found quite surprising is that people don't realize yet that they can do more with their scrvUSD. Like once they've deposited, if you look at the outflows, like basically once people have put money in that vault, the vast majority of them, they're just going to keep it in an EOA, right? They're going to keep it on their wallet, or they might send it to another wallet, right? Or they've used like maybe a DEX, and then that DEX is going to send scrvUSD to their wallet. So a lot of people just kind of hold on to it, and it's auto compounding, and it's nice, and they figure, I'm getting 12%, 15% yield. I don't really need to do anything with it. But it's DeFi, and there's lots of other opportunities with your saving scrvUSD. You can LP with it on Curve. You can use it on other products like Spectra. And so the more, I think, also integration that we favor building on top of Curve and on the savings product, the more attractive we are going to be able to make the product to end users. And
so sorry, Benny, but just to clarify, the chart you're showing here, this is users who are exiting as scrvUSD or entering. It looks like these are outflows.
This is the exit, right? Outflows. So they've minted or they've deposited scrvUSD. They now have saving scrvUSD. And so what do they do with it? Well, for most of them, they just keep it in their wallet. And then the ones that don't will go and take advantage of like the Dollar pool, the Athena pool. I think now we've got one with Sky. This is a couple of weeks old already. We've got a few new pools, and all of those have, between 30, there's the infamous USD 0++. I think there was one as well. And all of those have a much higher yield than what you would get if you just get the saving scrvUSD in your wallet. So obviously, maybe the risk-averse nature of the people, the users that use that have deposited so far, makes it so that they're unwilling to deposit into those more risky products or to LP. But I think there's also like maybe a lack of awareness of all the opportunities that exist once you've received savings scrvUSD.
Yeah. So currently it seems like mainly the use case, if you have it, is just to hold it and earn the native yield, or there's some Curve liquidity pools where you can earn additional yield on it. But so far it looks like we haven't really observed any kind of leverage loop lending strategies like we see on some other yield-bearing stablecoins like SUSDE on Aave. It's a very common, and also on LlamaLend, it's a common strategy to borrow against it and leverage loop. We could, in the near future, see some kind of integration with lending protocols using scrvUSD to borrow peg-keeper stablecoins such as USDC, USDT, and leverage loop into the savings scrvUSD vault, for instance. Just throwing out, potential for additional integrations here.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And the road to
Maybe-
growth is. Yes, sorry, Alberto, you wanna?
Yeah, I wanted to also take one step back from the Curve protocol perspective and point out one particular thing that is, it's not a coincidence that we are using scrvUSD as much as possible as a pairing for liquidity pools, because this is also a very sustainable and scalable way to incentivize liquidity pools to hold scrvUSD. So yeah, if you look at the APYs for all the main scrvUSD pools on Curve, you can see they're pretty juicy and they're very organic. There is no CRV inflation going on there, and I think this is also one objective that was really achieved through scrvUSD. Not financial advice. Don't ape in those pools without doing your own research.
Yeah, not financial advice, but do have a look and make your own decision. We have Saint Rat, who does the resources, also now publishes every week a sort of rundown on the best yield opportunities on news.curve.fi, I think. And so you get a digest of all of the best opportunities on Curve, and those savings scrvUSD pools very often make the leaderboard. So this is for the outflows, and then we've got the inflows here.
Hey, by the way, we got a question in the comments.
Oh, sorry.
Can we throw up questions displayed on the screen? Oh yeah, that's slick.
Peg-keeper pools contain.
So the question is from Mo, and he's asking, what about new peg-keeper pools containing scrvUSD instead of CRVUSD?
I think that's an interesting idea. The only thing to take into consideration for this is if we end up doing that, aside from the fact that there are probably other considerations I'm not seeing right now, but if we end up doing this, we will most likely have to increase the fee splitter cap, because I would expect some large percentage of the supply being staked, because effectively we would also need to pay for liquidity, so we will need to spend more on growth again. So it's definitely a good idea, but we have it's basically a question of whether we want to incentivize with CRV like we're doing now, or with scrvUSD for yield. But at the end of the day, somebody has to pay for the incentivization anyway. So I would basically move where the payment comes from, I would say.
I have a question.
Problem is,
I have a question for Garrett. Garrett, are you there? Come back, Garrett. I want to ask you a question about CRVUSD.
I'm here.
So for anybody that's listening at home, we have our Squid, which you can earn by providing any sort of reward or any sort of kind of action into the Leviathan ecosystem. When are we going to get a CRVUSD pool paired up with Squid?
That's a very good question. I can't comment on that. What I can say is that if you do happen to be on Fraxtal and waiting for it, one of the best pools for earning rewards with CurveUSD is the new scurveUSD/sfrax pool on Fraxtal. I think there might be a bug in the UI, but it's showing something like 80% rewards. I think it's a little bit lower than that, but it's very good. It's also earning very good organic trading fees by dint of the fact that it's a stable swap in G pool. So highly recommend to check that out.
Yeah, sorry guys. We'll get back to regular commentary. We just wanted to toot our own horn here at Leviathan.
And that is totally your prerogative to do. This is your space.
But yeah, Mo raises a very good point about the fact that peg keepers would effectively dilute the yield. That could be a problem. But it would also increase the profit of peg keepers. Yeah, this is very good question, but it requires some deeper thoughts before we can give a proper answer to this.
And by the way, just in general, I want to say that any questions you guys have in the comments, we're kind of still getting used to the whole streaming thing, but we want to take your questions and have back and forth. So, you know, anything you want to ask, we want to try to address it on stream. So thanks for the question, Mo. Benny, would you like to continue showing us what you got here?
Yeah, sure. I'll just wrap up quickly because looks like we're running out of time. I don't know if we've got about 1 hour. Yeah, so this is the inflows, and you can just see what we're mentioning, what I was mentioning earlier, that people who the way that they get into saving CrvUSD is primarily by swapping, by buying CrvUSD on the market and then directly depositing it. So they're not getting it from the stablecoin markets on Curve. That being said, there's still sort of like a linear relationship, obviously, between the supply of CrvUSD and then the success of saving CrvUSD as a profit, as a product. And so, right, like the long-term growth of the savings product is going to be predicated upon the growth of CrvUSD as a lending protocol. And so there too, like, we've come to realize that user research, or knowing the users and knowing the users' pain points, is also extremely important. Just listening to some feedback, right? So like the chart that we talked about earlier about how saving CrvUSD has stabilized the rates and their volatility. This was Mo that was asking for feedback. And we heard this from a large number of people. Right? And so we know now that we need to better communicate on that effect of saving CrvUSD on the rate. We also need to communicate better in the UI. Like right now, the UI just displays sort of like the spot rate, like real time, which is terribly volatile compared to what you're actually paying, which is more of an average over time. So we are going to switch that so that people get a better sense of, like, if I take out a loan for like 6 months to a year, like what am I, based on this historical data, actually going to pay? And very rarely is it going to be like the 30% that you can see during a random spike. So we've got learnings in terms of UI. We've also realized, and this is about the whale that we were mentioning earlier that exited one of the ETH market earlier. One of the reasons why they exited was that they did not really understand that they could do partial repayments for their loan. And so they were unsatisfied with the lack of that feature that actually was there. And if you're in soft liquidation and you go to the Curve UI, right, there's a notice there that tells you that you can actually do some partial repayment. But it's not visible. Like this is not a game of blaming the users, because it's really, I think, on the Curve UI and on our communication process, right? Like we need to start thinking about how can we make things and actions more obvious to the users. So there's a lot of work.
There's some not very standard design features of CurveUSD that is difficult for users to wrap their heads around. The liquidation mechanism, when you go into soft liquidation, where your debt and your collateral are shifting back and forth between each other as the price changes. If the price goes down beyond a certain threshold, where you're entirely sitting in CrvUSD, and your collateral has been completely sold off, that can be reversed, and you can recover your position if the price goes back up. What can happen, though, is a user could go from this soft liquidation to which is meant to protect their principal. They can, if their health goes beyond a certain point, they can be hard liquidated, and that hard liquidation doesn't happen at a specific price point like it does in other lending and CDP protocols that people are more accustomed to. That hard liquidation can happen at any point within the soft liquidation range, and that's kind of a difficult thing to grasp. But ultimately, I guess the easy answer is you got to be monitoring your health and making sure that. like you say, you can make partial repayments. So you got to be keeping track of the health of your position and making sure that you don't become vulnerable to hard liquidation, which by the way can be you can become more susceptible to it depending on volatility conditions. If prices are changing rapidly and your soft liquidation zone is going back and forth rapidly, then you're more likely to be eroding your health quickly. So scrvUSD does not come without risks or additional kind of understanding of these unique design decisions that on the one hand have great properties to help protect a user's position, but on the other hand introduce some unfamiliar features.
Yeah, and so I think there's a lot of work to be done, sort of educating users and getting people to understand the protocol. And so like the resources guys are working hard at this, and I think they're going to try new formats, like video, and not just having like a a website with only text and some like interactive, like they're already doing interactive graphs, but it's clearly not enough. And I think another thing is, like, ideally in a perfect world, we have great resources and users look out, like, and users actually try to learn how the thing works. But I think in practice, it's it's not going to have, like, not everyone's going to make the effort to actually try and understand the protocol. And that doesn't mean necessarily that they shouldn't use it just because they don't have a couple hours to spend to understand the in and outs of it. And so that brings out something a bit more challenging, which is, how do we design the UI on the website and maybe tools around it to make the management of your loan a lot easier and a lot more intuitive? And so you don't spend like your entire days like refreshing F5 and trying to figure out what you should do. But maybe your loan, like your health, starts to be a little bit worrying, and you get a notification on Telegram or an email that you subscribe to, like some sort of service, a notification service that you subscribe to, and then that tells you click here and fix your shit, right? And you can repay, you can do all of those different actions. Here are your options. Just click here, and we'll take you through the management of your loan. We do, right, that's right. We do have actually already a Telegram bot that helps you. We've had it for a few months now. That helps you watch the health and the status of any address, so including your own. I do not have the URL on hand, but I'm pretty sure if you ask on the Curve Telegram channel, somebody will be kind enough to share an invitation to the bot, and then you just DM the bot, add your address there, and you can get Telegram notifications.
The Curve Monitor Telegram bot is extremely useful to monitor major scrvUSD interactions, and it is a tool that I tell all of the LlamaRisk team, like, hey, you got to join this group and keep up with the interactions that are going on Curve. It's a very, very useful tool to get the big picture of what sort of interactions are happening on scrvUSD.
Oh yeah, and there Mo is sharing it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's it for me. But yeah, I just want to conclude by saying that there's a lot of great work that's being done by the resources guys, Mo and ThinkPad, 2D, and the front end team, also working really hard to sort of address this problem and make the product a lot more intuitive and a lot more user friendly. And hopefully that unlocks the next stage of growth for scrvUSD and saving scrvUSD.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing all that, Benny. I think at this point we'll probably get towards closing up here. I think we've shared a lot of analysis and gone through a lot of the design decisions, the mechanics behind scrvUSD. We've gone through a lot, so I want to take a step back and just basically shill the work that the Curve team is doing. So I've got on my screen share here if you want to pull that back up. So I'm sharing on my screen the latest 2024 report that Curve has has recently published on their revamped news page. I can't see it on the, oh, do I need to stop sharing and share again? Okay, so I'm sharing my screen again. There we go. Okay, so this report goes through all the things that the major updates that Curve team has implemented over this past year. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but I found it to be a really nice overview of all the things that have happened over this past year. And there's also some analysis down below. If I keep scrolling, there's a lot that happened this year. There's some analysis curve in the numbers here, so you can see some important metrics on protocol adoption and performance over this past year. I found this to be a really convenient way to get a good view of everything that Curve has done in 2024. Alberto, I'll hand it over to you. What is coming up in this next year that you're really excited about, since you know all the inner workings of what the Curve team has cooking?
Question is more about what can I say about what's coming. I guess one thing I've been working on for a very long time is some incremental improvements for CryptoSwap that will probably help a lot on that front. CryptoSwap is an amazing algorithm from Curve, and I think it didn't get the love it deserves. So we're just polishing a bit more. So expect some improvements on that front. To give you a sense of how powerful CryptoSwap is, it has basically powered all the pools on Spectre.
Did we just lose we lost Alberto. So we came so close to having some alpha. Sorry, folks. I'm trying to do you guys the solid and get some insider info.
Yep.
What's going on with Curve, but we'll see if Alberto can come back.
I'm back. All this to say, CryptoSwap is finally getting some love thanks to Spectra, and I'm very, very excited to see also more use cases on top of like yield trading, and not only yield trading that will come, because CryptoSwap is basically our answer to Uniswap. It's like a volatile assets AMM from Curve, and I think it has a lot of hidden potential that I'm looking forward to explore next year.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for being willing to come on and share the work that you've done with scrvUSD. I'm really pleased with what we've seen so far, and looking forward to how the market trajectory just evolves going forward, and seeing if these correlations we've been seeing are going to continue, or what's coming next. That's the exciting thing about our industry, is there's always some kind of curveball that gets thrown, and trying to make sense of it all is a never-ending problem, and really is what creates all the excitement in our industry. So thanks for being here, and thanks for all of you, the rest of you guys, your excellent analysis, looking into how scrvUSD has performed in the past months. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Garrett and Sam, the Leviathan guys, for allowing us to come on and talk about this.
Thank you for joining. This is amazing updates. Really, really great stuff.
All right. Well, let's sign off then, and I'll just use your catchphrase, Garrett. See you next tide. Is that good?